The Vikings. We're on the trail of where they went in America. This could change American history as we know it. I'm archaeologist and military vet, Blue Nelson.
And I'm archaeologist and ocean explorer, Mike Arbuthnot.
I'm having trouble standing up.
We'll go to any length to uncover the real history of America.
Got it, man. I think we're game on.
We've worked together for almost 10 years, but we've never tackled a mystery as big as this.
Holy cow.
And my Viking blood means that this investigation is personal.
These are my cousins.
We'll be using cutting-edge technology and hands-on archaeology
to reveal how the Vikings survived
I mean, this is like something from a horror movie.
and how far into America they really went.
Together, we're on the hunt for America's lost Vikings.
Man, I'm stoked. Never thought I'd make it this far. I mean, I feel like I'm at the end of the earth right now.
I definitely feel like this is the start to an adventure.
We're headed to the site of one of the biggest mysteries in American history.
This is probably one of the most enigmatic sites in North American archaeology.
Just off the east coast of Canada, on the island of Newfoundland, is a discovery so extraordinary that when archaeologists announced what they had found, it shocked the world.
What did they see here?
Yeah.
This is what we got to find out.
60 years ago, Norwegian explorer Helge Ingstad came to this barren, desolate shore and made a truly historic discovery.
So this is hallowed ground.
Yeah.
This is Lonsau Meadows. These grass mounds were once thought of as an ancient Native American camp, but Ingstad knew better. To him, they could only mean one thing: Vikings. Ingstad came to Canada looking for Vinland, a legendary Viking land mentioned in ancient texts. He was convinced that this 1,000-year-old settlement was it.
This is the beginning of European settlement in North America.
That's super cool.
60 years on, Lonsau Meadows remains the only confirmed Viking site in North America. So what were the Vikings doing here, at the ends of the earth? Vikings originated in Scandinavia. By the end of the 8th century, they were the scourge of Europe, conquering land, stealing resources, and capturing slaves. Their expansion soon took them further into Europe, across Britain, France, Spain, and even Russia, also going west to Iceland, and finally, Greenland. But experts never thought they reached North America, until the discovery of Lonsau Meadows. Between us, Mike and I have conducted archaeology in 25 US states and dug everywhere from Easter Island to the Middle East. But for me, this investigation is personal. According to my family tree, we descend from Vikings. So growing up feeling like a Viking, this investigation is very important to me. Lonsau Meadows is the buried footprint of a Viking complex. 3 large houses and 5 smaller buildings arranged north to south, roughly 300 feet from the shore.
They say that actually between 5 and 11 people would have occupied this space.
Ooh, this place probably just reeked of man.
Archaeologists spent decades scouring this site, digging, cataloging, and analyzing every last artifact they could find. They've used all that knowledge to create this extraordinary reconstruction.
Look at this thing. It's incredible.
This accurate build is based on this small section of the site. Using the exact measurements from the footprints and building techniques from the old world, archaeologists rebuilt the huts precisely as they would have looked. Viking houses in Scandinavia were constructed almost entirely from wood. But as Vikings ventured across the Atlantic, timber became scarcer, so they turned to turf instead.
One of the things that strikes me immediately is this is a monumental piece of architecture.
Yeah. It's definitely an undertaking.
The main hall is an incredible 96 by 25 feet, built using turf over a wooden frame. 1,000 years ago, something like this would have been a major project.
These walls right here are 6 feet thick. That's some insulation.
That's a lot of insulation. I mean, these are better insulated than modern homes. You don't really get a good sense for how big these things are just by looking at the footprints. I mean, this place is much, much larger than I would have guessed.
The theory is that the architecture of these homes were basically like an upturned ship. You know, they'd have a Viking longboat, they'd flip it upside down and live under it, and then architecturally it evolved into the longhouses.
Wow, look at this.
The house is packed with replicas of artifacts found here on site, along with carefully reproduced pieces from the old world.
The Vikings have a bad rap. They're considered marauders, pirates, pillagers.
While the Vikings were feared raiders, there was a purpose behind their conquests. They were running out of suitable farmland at home and needed to feed their growing population.
In reality, they were incredible craftspeople. They were explorers.
Most Vikings were farmers. They lived in regularly spaced farmsteads surrounded by grain fields. Even the Viking raiders would normally return home for the harvest.
This is a loom.
The animals often slept inside over winter. It was pretty crowded, except for the master's box bed.
Look at this here, man. I mean, this fella's got like a mattress. You got little doors he can close. He's got privacy.
Yeah.
This here is the man's room. It's probably the chieftain here and his navigator.
Yeah, I can be the navigator today.
All right, well then you're Goose and I'm Maverick.
Despite all the work that's been done here, mysteries still remain.
The Vikings traveled from Europe thousands of miles to get here. What were they doing here?
The current thinking is that the Vikings stayed at Lonso Meadows for just a few years. The question is, why would they have built so much for just a short stay?
This site is like an historic cold case. The answers are here. We just need to find them. Blue and I decide to explore. The more I see, I feel like something isn't right. It's different from the Viking sites we've seen before.
Hey, Blue, you copy?
Hey, Blue, you copy?
Go ahead, Mike.
Hey, I'm down on the beach.
And I'm seeing something kind of interesting.
Roger that.
I'm on my way.
It took me a while, but I think I can see what's missing.
Hey, man.
Hey, brother.
So, looking around this location here, I'm realizing that it is entirely exposed coastline. There is zero protection here from the elements.
They'd need to bring in supplies to survive here. I don't think they could grow food and raise livestock on this land.
Based on what I'm seeing here, this seems to be atypical of a Viking settlement.
I'm not finding any evidence for agriculture at all.
I'm just wondering now, could the site have been used for something totally different?
So, if they didn't farm here, why did they pick this place to set up camp? We're going to need to look at this site from a totally new perspective. It's time to break out the tech. This incredible archaeological site on the northern tip of Newfoundland is proof the Vikings were in North America 500 years before Christopher Columbus even set sail. But we still don't know what they were doing here. They don't seem to have been farming, So what was the site used for?
We need to get in here, take a look at these clues, like forensically, and see how we can piece them together. If we're gonna play detective, then I'm Starsky, you're Hutch.
I'm starting with the biggest clue the Vikings left behind, the footprints of the buildings. Many experts believe this was a temporary site, only used by the Vikings for a few years, at most a decade. But not everyone agrees.
There's an Icelandic academic, Bjarni Einarsson. He believes that occupation here was much, much longer. Based on his interpretation of the architecture of the various buildings, he's thinking that there could have been people coming here for 100 years.
It's controversial. The length of time the Vikings were here is still hotly disputed. To help discover the truth, I'm going to use a drone to make the first ever 3D map of the site. We'll be able to use this map to age the remains here by comparing them with known Viking buildings in Scandinavia.
It's never been done before, so this would be a great first. We're going to be able to contribute to the scientific body of information about Lhasa Meadows. And this is like a dream come true.
As the drone flies over the site, it takes hundreds of detailed photographs.
The drone is incredible because you can take the individual images and build a high-resolution three-dimensional model. This is going to tell us quite a bit about the architecture of the individual buildings. The Vikings shifted their architecture over time. And perhaps by looking at the different footprints here, it'll say something about how long the site was occupied. If Bjarne is proven to be correct, it could force us to reevaluate everything we know about Vikings in North America.
I've crunched and processed the data, and I can't wait to show Blue what I found. If we can work out how long the Vikings stayed, it might shed light on why they were here.
What's up, bud?
Hey, dude. The results of the photogrammetry you're in? Take a look at this flyby. Wow.
This is the highest resolution map of Lhasa Meadows ever created. It's so detailed that if there were any Vikings left, we could tell you what color their eyes are.
I have never seen anything quite like this. I mean, I've seen photogrammetry of small objects, but never of an entire landscape.
By adjusting the color balance, we can highlight elevation changes, which, for the first time in high resolution, allows us to see the exact design of each house.
What's cool is you can actually see right here in this picture, all three of the larger structures look completely different from one another.
They definitely have different layouts, different architectural styles. It's curious.
Now we have the data to test Bjarni Einarsson's theory. If he's right, it could mean the Vikings were in North America for much longer than anyone thought possible. These are the footprints of Viking houses built in Iceland in the late 10th century. After 200 years, the Viking era was at its peak and extended halfway around the world. It was around this time most archaeologists believed Lhasa Meadows was first occupied. So the architecture of the houses on site should match.
That's identical.
It is almost, it's right there. Let's see what else we got.
This second house in Iceland is a style that came into fashion decades later in the early 11th century.
Look at that.
It's a match. This one only looks like it's got 2 rooms and a grand hall.
Yeah, it's almost identical.
It's possible that Lhasa Meadows may have been occupied for much longer than some experts think.
Let's see what else.
Okay. This looks very different from the other examples you were showing me.
This final house style appears in Greenland around the 12th century. By now, the Vikings had merged with other European cultures. This is long after Lhasa Meadows was supposedly abandoned. So this one shouldn't match, which it doesn't. But if I flip it, The story of the Vikings in North America may about to be turned on its head.
We're at Lawnsaw Meadows in Newfoundland. This site is the ultimate proof that Vikings arrived here in North America. Many experts think that the Vikings lived here for 3 to 10 years. But a radical new theory suggests that they were here for much longer. And now, for the first time, we have the photographic data to test it. House designs from the late 10th and early 11th century seem to match the buildings here. However, an early 12th century house design doesn't match until Mike flips it.
Look at that, it's reversed.
Wow. It's pretty close.
Really close. I'm convinced that the eastern structure at Lawnsaw Meadows was added later.
It really defies conventional wisdom.
This new investigation suggests the houses here have been built at least 100 years apart. Einarson's theory could be right.
This theory is controversial, but the implications are spectacular. It could indicate that the Vikings were here longer than we believed possible. This could change American history as we know it.
If the Vikings were coming here for more than a century, they'd need to be able to work outside during the freezing winter. Average winter temperatures in Newfoundland are around 7 degrees colder than both Iceland and southern Greenland.
This is the end of summer. Yeah. And it's freezing, you know, I mean, what would it be like in the dead of winter?
How long could you actually make it right here, dealing with these conditions?
We need to find the answer, even if it means testing the temperatures on ourselves.
I've managed to get us a session in Toronto Rehabilitation Institute's high-tech climate lab. We can assume that they had the clothing to stay warm. But how long would that clothing keep them warm?
It can be so cold that you could literally be frozen to death through the incredibly harsh winters.
It's gonna be dangerous, but using authentic Viking clothing, we'll see if we can withstand those extreme freezing temperatures. But only one of us is ready to put their body on the line. How do you always get out of the tough stuff?
It's just the way things are meant to be. If you've got Viking blood, you should be able to withstand the cold in the chamber. I'm going to demonstrate whether or not the Vikings were able to survive a summer in Florida, okay?
Game on. You ready?
This is a hospital.
It's appropriate.
Well, I tell you, I think it's actually starting to sink in the gravity of how dangerous this could be. To keep me safe as the temperature plunges, researcher Dr. Sophia Yu Lee will be monitoring me throughout this dangerous experiment. Blue Nelson.
Okay, before you go into the chamber, you need to worry about the frostbite, and also the concern is the cold temperature actually increase your blood pressure. And we see people have a heart attack and stroke. So it is very important. You just tell us, I feel really, really cold, let me out.
Listen, we're gonna have to come up with a signal so that you can pull the plug, and I can be
All
like,
right.
look, Mike, she pulled the plug on me, it wasn't me.
All right, getting ready.
Sensors placed around my body will monitor temperature, including my fingers and toes, the areas most at risk from frostbite.
I think we have all the sensors secured.
We'll see you on the other side.
Mike, what kind of partner are you? Very little Viking clothing survives. Look at all this. But we've created an outfit using archaeological evidence and historical sources. What measurements did they get? It's so accurate, we've even copied the stitching used 1,000 years ago.
Soft. Itchy.
It's itchy because rather than the iconic stereotype of furs and leather, most Vikings wore woven natural fibers like wool and flax. And the layers just keep coming.
Blue's always claiming to have Viking ancestry, so now's the moment of truth. Will Blue truly represent the Vikings well?
Check it out, Mike. I'm an American Viking.
Awesome.
Yeah, man.
Dude, you're rocking it.
I'm gonna start wearing this to the office.
You about ready to get in the freezer?
Well, I'm as ready as I'm ever gonna be. I'd be lying to you if I told you it didn't make me a little apprehensive. Time to find out if Viking clothing can help me survive a Newfoundland winter. We're investigating the Vikings in North America. We know they built a camp in Newfoundland, and now new evidence suggests they used the site decades longer than previously thought.
Wow.
But could they have survived the extreme cold? To find out, I've dressed up as a Viking, in a historically accurate outfit, of course, then hopped into a research-grade cold chamber, which seemed like a good idea at the time.
We're ready to drop them down closer to freezing.
Due to the dangers of prolonged exposure to freezing temperatures, Dr. Paul O, a cardiovascular specialist, is on hand to monitor the experiment.
The body's really good at trying to preserve heat, right? So the idea is that we'll keep our core as warm as possible. As a result of that, the outsides of us start to shut down. Blood vessels constrict to keep more blood towards the middle of us. Blood pressure will rise, and as a reflex, our heart rate kind of slows down.
After 25 minutes, we're at 15 degrees Fahrenheit.
I got this small space. I'm tethered to a wall. I can only pace back and forth to keep myself warm. I feel a bit like a caged animal.
Normally, we don't let people stay there for more than 20 minutes.
Blue has now been in for over 30. They have never let anyone stay this long inside the chamber without modern protective clothing.
He's doing really well. We don't see a dramatic change in his finger temperature and then also his upper back. So it seems that he is keeping himself fairly warm.
So far, the Viking clothes are doing their job, but we still haven't hit the average winter temperature at Lonsau Meadows, 7 degrees Fahrenheit.
I hope he holds out, crossing my fingers and toes. What temperature now?
7 Fahrenheit.
Well, you have made it, my friend.
Great.
You are right now experiencing a Viking winter.
As well as their fires, the Vikings would go to extreme lengths to avoid freezing. The body heat of the animals they brought inside helped to warm their houses. Suddenly, the medical team spots a spike in Blue's measurements.
It looks like the finger temperature has dropped to about 10 degrees Fahrenheit or so.
Okay.
So checking with Blue to see that he's not getting any signs of frostbite.
Hey, Blue. Are you feeling any numbness or tingling?
No, I'm doing really good, man. My core seems to be doing fine. My toes are cold, my nose is cold, but other than that, I'm doing great.
Blue's now been in there for an hour and a half, and the Viking clothes are working. No signs of frostbite, good body warmth, everything we hoped the experiment would show. Blue has shown Vikings could have coped working outside in a 7-degree Lonsau Meadows winter.
Very impressed with the Viking clothing. I mean, if it would have gotten any colder, we could have thrown on another layer or two. So the Vikings definitely had the technology to keep warm. We've got evidence that the Vikings could survive Newfoundland winters. It supports the theory that Lonsau Meadows was used for longer than previously thought. But we still need more evidence. If the Vikings were in North America over decades, there's only one place where it might be recorded, in one of the most treasured Viking relics on the planet. We're in Iceland, home of the Vikings. Wow, look at this. These people, these are my cousins. Reykjavik's beautiful. I mean, this is like family to me. I see a bunch of guys walking around here look just like me, nice beards and everything. But Mike and I aren't here for fun and games. We're here for business. We've come to the Arne Magnusson Institute in Reykjavik, which houses some of the oldest surviving records of the Vikings, their sagas. And we've been given special access to the delicate volumes. Many believe Lonsdal Meadows is the Viking utopia Vinland, but does it match the description in these pages? These documents could be our biggest clue yet. These ancient sagas are based on oral histories passed down through the generations and transcribed by monks 600 years ago.
Oh man, look at these. Incredible.
Unbelievably, the Old Norse in this handwritten calfskin document is a variation of modern Icelandic, making understanding them very easy, if you speak Viking. Which is where Professor Gisli Sigurdsson comes in. We were hoping that this right here will give us some insight into the voyages into North America.
One of the most amazing stories we have are the stories about the voyages to Vinland.
Vinland is the Viking name for a land beyond Greenland, and Professor Sigurdsson believes it's somewhere in North America. But the exact location is a mystery.
Leif Erikson is the central character in these voyages.
The sagas describe what Leif Erikson finds in Vinland.
They find wild grapes, a frost-free winter, and wheat and so on, and there's plenty of salmon, a bigger salmon than they had ever seen before.
Due to the abundance of grapes and his love of wine, Leif names it Vinland.
And you have Vinland here with an accent.
So right there is the oldest documentation of North America anywhere in the world. The first reference to North America in any written form. As a professional archaeologist, this is like dream come true stuff.
But this ancient description of Vinland has thrown us a major curveball.
The big one for me was the frost-free winter.
Yeah.
No, sir. No, not Newfoundland. Not Newfoundland.
Wheat, salmon, wild grapes. I didn't see any of that in Lonsdal Meadows at all.
It seems Lonsdal Meadows is not Vinland, but Gisli thinks he's found some other text that can help us.
The text says that they settled in a camp called Leif's Camp. And that camp is on an island with calm seas on the west and rough seas on the east. So that is a match there.
Yeah.
All right. Hey,
Yeah.
high five to archaeology.
Boom. Nice.
This could be an actual mention of Lonsdal Meadows in the sagas. And if that's true, then the camp was founded by Leif Erikson. But we still don't know why he chose that windswept peninsula. What drove him to risk everything and sail into the unknown?
We are on the quest to discover why the first Viking settlement to be found in North America was established in a barren wilderness on the tip of Newfoundland. Incredible. This trail has led us to its likely founder, Leif Erikson. Now, we want to know why he risked his life to get there.
What a story. He travels into an unknown land, he discovers Vinland. It's just remarkable.
I think what we need to do is figure out more about Leif Erikson.
Funny you should say, because I actually know somebody who I think can help us out.
I'll drink to that.
But first, I want to start by ordering the kind of food Leif himself, along with Blue's Viking ancestors, would have eaten.
The food of the ancestors. All right.
Bon appetit.
First up is a Viking favorite, roasted sheep's head. Vikings took their sheep with them wherever they traveled and made sure nothing went to waste.
Eat me.
The rest of our menu consists of Viking seafood staples of every shape and size.
Wow, that's definitely a fish.
They consumed dried fish on long ocean voyages, but the true delicacies were whale blubber and Blue's appetizer for today, fermented shark.
It kind of smells the way it looks.
It smells like death.
Yeah, I'm feeling more Viking by the moment. All right, that's shark right there.
Its high concentration of urea means the flesh of the huge Greenland shark is usually toxic. So, traditionally, it was buried in the ground for 5 months before it was safe to eat.
This is your heritage, my friend.
Oh man, that was delicious.
Check out this texture.
Historical sources suggest Vikings drove whales ashore to feast on their blubber.
Go for it. Bon appetit.
Wow. That's something else. You gotta try this.
Oh, I don't think I do.
It's
the
not that
faces
bad.
you just made.
You gotta try a nugget.
Okay, here's what I've learned today. I am not into Viking food.
No wonder they wanted to find new lands. They're looking for better food.
Once Blue's stomach is settled, it's back to business. We're heading to meet Viking expert Ziggy Jolkelsen in the snow-covered Herkadala Valley. He's promised to reveal what might have driven Leif Erikson to discover North America.
Here we are.
Holy cow.
Beautiful 52 square meters long house.
This 560 square foot building is a vital landmark in American history. It is on this very spot around the year 970 that Leif, potentially the first European to set foot in North America, was born.
They were living here together, his family, his father, Erik the Red, and his mother was called Þjóðhildur.
So why did they end up leaving here?
Erik the Red was maybe not the nicest person in the world. He killed 2 of his neighbors in a fight, and because of that, he was more or less forced to leave this valley.
This guy literally sounds like the worst neighbor to have.
In the Viking Age, violent deaths were commonplace. But Leif's father went too far, even for this bloodthirsty society. According to the sagas, he kills 2 more neighbors and is banished from Iceland. In search of a new home, he sails into uncharted waters. 200 miles west, he finds a country even more inhospitable than Iceland. Incredibly, Leif's father, Erik the Red, discovers Greenland.
He named it Greenland because he said, if the island has a good name, then people will follow us from Iceland over to Greenland.
Leif had some very big shoes to fill. You know, his father goes off and discovers a new land.
Yes.
The son decides, strap on them boots and try it himself.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about Leif? Like, what were his motivations?
He was, of course, raised up as a rich man's son, and described in books and what we know about him that he was very handsome and seems to be very clever too.
Handsome? Clever? I told you I was a Viking.
So, of course, he wanted to do something like his father, find something, explore the world.
Driven to outdo his father's feat of exploration, Leif traveled across the Atlantic and established a base at Lonsau Meadows. And it was he, not Columbus, who the saga suggests became the first European to set foot on the Americas.
It's just amazing for me to consider that this house right here was the home and the birthplace for the first European to set foot on North America.
Yes.
This is an important spot.
It's a holy ground.
We now know Leif was driven to be a truly great Viking explorer. But why settle at this barren site in Newfoundland? It's the final piece of the mystery, and there's only one place we can find the answer. Back at Lonsau Meadows. We've returned to Lonsau Meadows to find out why Viking explorer Leif Erikson chose this frozen hinterland to set up the only Viking camp found in North America to date. and I think I'm onto something. We know the Vikings were farmers, and we also know that they didn't farm here. The site's more bog than land. In fact, I think that might be the answer. On the surface of the bog is something any self-respecting Viking would instantly recognize. Rusty, colored water with an oily sheen. The bog would have been a big draw for the Vikings because it would have provided something very, very important to them: bog ore. The bog acts like a sieve, trapping iron ore in heavy concentrations. Bog ore was the source of most Viking iron. They used iron for many things, including their tools, their weapons, and nails for the ships. The question I have is this bog big enough to justify such a large settlement, and would it be enough to make them stay? To find out, I'm asking a real Viking. Well, okay, one of the guys that works here. Resident Viking, Mark Pilgrim. So, this is a pretty expansive bog.
Yeah.
How much bog ore do you think is in the area?
Tons. If you look at up and down this brook here, you go down a certain distance, you're gonna find bog ore. You wanna find some?
I do. I got a trowel, I got a
what?
A little excavation tool.
You're not gonna use trowel. Trowel ain't gonna help you.
All right, well, I guess we're gonna do this the old-fashioned way.
Well, the old-fashioned way.
All right. Well, I never saw this day coming, stripping off in front of a Viking. All right.
So, give you a clue. It's about a foot down and a foot in. So reach underneath and try to get your hand underneath the bog and start feeling for what might feel like rocks.
All right. Well, let's see if I can do this. Our investigation depends on there being enough iron ore here to justify the Vikings setting up camp.
Feel anything?
I think I do. Got a handful of
clay.
Let me try this again. 1,000 years ago, this is exactly what the Vikings would have been doing. This water is really cold. While the indigenous people of America were still using stone, the Vikings were extracting iron here. No, that's a flake. I'm embarrassed of my ancestors now. Wow. Successful. So we've successfully got bog ore. I'll be honest with you, this isn't exactly what I was expecting. It's just like rock. That's incredible. Bog ore can contain up to 53% iron. The iron contained beneath the ground, it's like a gold mine. This whole area would basically be a bog ore mine. It kind of feels spiritual. You know, without this resource here, the Vikings don't settle here. Transforming bog ore into iron was an essential part of life for Vikings, allowing them to compete with other cultures of the time. They were master metalworkers, and iron was vital to their way of life. Most farms had a simple forge, and specialist smiths made everything from knives, cauldrons, and keys to exquisite double-edged swords. After processing in a 2,000-degree furnace, the bog ore releases the iron, allowing the blacksmith to get to work. Back then, Vikings couldn't find good ore in Greenland, so finding a resource like this would have easily justified setting up camp here. But at Lonsau Meadows, the archaeological evidence suggests they were making just one thing: nails. 99 nail fragments were discovered, far more than found in any single Viking farm in Scandinavia. Why were so many nails being used here?
So what you got, man?
Well, they had resources here. I mean, this was heavily forested during their time. They also had plentiful bog ore, so they could make nails.
The evidence is starting to add up. Lonsau Meadows is located on the coast. The Vikings were making a large quantity of nails from the local iron supply, and they had access to as much wood as they wanted, which all leads to one thing. Basically, what we're looking at is archaeological evidence that suggests ship repair and blacksmithing.
Yeah, I agree.
The only other sites where this quantity of nails were found are European Viking shipyards.
I think that truck stop is probably the best analogy you could use for this location.
Repair your ship, take a break, resupply, and then head out. We believe Lanza Meadows was the ultimate way station, a beacon at the edge of the known world. If you look at the map, you'll see Lanza Meadows is right here at the end of the peninsula. This would have been an easy location to direct other Viking ships to from Greenland. You're coming down the coast of Labrador, you see Belle Isle, and dead ahead is your Viking truck stop.
And there's no doubt that this is a route that they would have taken.
But then it begs a question. If this is just a stopover, then where were they going?
Lanza Meadows has finally revealed its secrets. We now believe it wasn't Vinland, but a base used to help explore the rest of North America. This wasn't the end of the journey. It was the beginning. Before we followed the trail, we've invited a group of modern Vikings to share a beer. Hey, is this where the party's at?
Welcome.
Hey, y'all. How are you? Thank you very much.
I'm
Cheers,
good.
man.
Oh, look, mine looks better than yours. To be honest with you, I feel like I've got in touch with my Viking roots.
So what do you guys think of fermented shark?
I'd kill him and eat him before I ate the shark.
Maybe not the best plan for colonization.
I'm really excited about what we've learned, and I feel like we're on the right path.
We've discovered that they definitely could have spent the winter in North America, and we've also seen that they may have actually stayed in the New World much longer than we had expected.
We have no idea where this is going to take us next. We are definitely on the trail of Vikings in North America. I think this is the way to drink beer.
Everything tastes better out of a horn.